Imagine sailing across the vast Atlantic Ocean in the winter of 1872. The wind pushes steadily against the sails, the wooden hull creaks gently with every wave, and the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. For days, the sea has been calm. Nothing unusual, just another long journey across open water. Then suddenly, a ship appears in the distance. At first, it seems normal. The sails are raised. The vessel is moving slowly with the wind. But something feels wrong. There is no one on deck. No crew adjusting the sails. No captain scanning the horizon. No voices. Just a silent ship drifting across the ocean. When sailors finally board the vessel, what they find will become one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. The ship was called the Mary Celeste, and everyone on board had vanished. The story begins in November of 1872. The Mary Celeste was a merchant brigantine, a two-masted sailing vessel used to transport cargo across long distances. That year, the ship departed from New York Harbor with a routine mission. Its destination was Genoa, Italy. The cargo consisted of more than 700 barrels of industrial alcohol, packed carefully in the ship's hold. On board were 10 people. The captain, Benjamin Briggs, was an experienced and highly respected sailor. Friends described him as calm, disciplined, and deeply religious. He had spent most of his life at sea and knew how to command a vessel through difficult waters. This voyage was slightly unusual for him for one important reason. He had decided to bring his family. His wife, Sarah Briggs, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, were traveling with him. The rest of the crew consisted of 7 experienced sailors, each familiar with the demands of transatlantic voyages. By all accounts, everything about the expedition appeared normal. The ship was seaworthy. The crew was capable. The weather at departure was clear. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York Harbor and began its journey across the Atlantic. Weeks passed. Then, on December 5th, another ship sailing in the same region made a strange discovery. The vessel was called the Dei Gratia. Its captain, David Morehouse, noticed a ship moving erratically several miles away. From a distance, the vessel seemed unstable. The sails were partially set, but the ship was drifting unpredictably. Morehouse recognized the name painted on the hull, Mary Celeste. This immediately caught his attention because the 2 ships had departed New York around the same time. Concerned that something might be wrong, he ordered a small boarding party to investigate. What they found shocked them. The ship was completely empty. No crew. No passengers. No captain. The lifeboat was missing. But everything else looked strangely normal. The cargo was still in the hold. The food supplies were untouched. The crew's personal belongings remained neatly stored. Even the captain's cabin looked orderly, with clothing and navigation tools still in place. It did not look like the crew had abandoned the ship in panic. But there were small details that made the situation deeply unsettling. The ship's logbook contained its last entry from November 25th. That entry placed the Mary Celeste near the Azores Islands, but when the Dei Gratia found the vessel 10 days later, it had drifted hundreds of kilometers away from that location. Another strange detail involved the ship's navigation instruments. The sextant and marine chronometer, essential tools used by captains to determine position at sea, were missing. This suggested that Captain Briggs may have taken them when leaving the ship. But why would an experienced captain abandon a perfectly functional vessel in the middle of the ocean? Investigators began searching the ship carefully. They discovered that about 1 meter of water had accumulated in the cargo hold. But this was not unusual for ships of that era. The bilge pumps were capable of removing that water easily. Nothing indicated that the ship was in immediate danger of sinking. In fact, sailors later confirmed that the Mary Celeste was still perfectly capable of completing its journey. It could have sailed to Italy without difficulty, yet the crew had vanished. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, no damage to the ship that could explain a sudden evacuation. The lifeboat was gone, which suggested that the crew had left intentionally. But if they had abandoned the ship, where did they go? The Atlantic Ocean is vast. Even today, finding a small lifeboat in open water would be extremely difficult. In 1872, it would have been almost impossible. No trace of the crew was ever found. Not a single body, not a single piece of wreckage, just an empty ship drifting across the ocean. The discovery quickly attracted international attention. Newspapers around the world began publishing dramatic stories about the ghost ship. Speculation spread rapidly. Some people suggested that pirates had attacked the vessel, but investigators found no evidence of theft. The cargo remained untouched. Others believed the crew had mutinied against Captain Briggs. But again, nothing in the ship's condition supported that idea. There were no signs of conflict. Another theory suggested that alcohol fumes from the cargo may have caused an explosion risk. If Captain Briggs smelled the fumes, he might have feared that the cargo could ignite. To avoid disaster, he may have ordered the crew into the lifeboat temporarily while the ship aired out. But if that happened, something must have separated the lifeboat from the ship. A sudden storm, a snapped rope, strong ocean currents. In that case, the crew would have been left stranded in the open sea while the Mary Celeste drifted away. But even that theory raises difficult questions. Why would such an experienced captain abandon his vessel so quickly? Why leave behind a ship that was still safe? Over the years, more unusual explanations emerged. Some people suggested the crew may have encountered a sea monster. Others believed supernatural forces were responsible. In the early 20th century, fictional stories even claimed the crew had been taken by aliens. Of course, none of these ideas have any evidence. But the mystery of the Mary Celeste has remained so strange that it continues to inspire speculation nearly 150 years later. What we know for certain is surprisingly simple. A fully functioning ship, 10 people on board, no distress signals, no damage severe enough to explain an emergency evacuation, and then nothing, just silence. When the Mary Celeste finally arrived in Gibraltar under the control of the Dei Gratia crew, investigators conducted a detailed inspection. But even after months of examination, they could not determine what had happened. The official inquiry ended without a clear conclusion. To this day, the disappearance of Captain Briggs, his family, and the entire crew remains unsolved. Somewhere in the vast Atlantic Ocean, the truth disappeared along with them, and the Mary Celeste sailed quietly into history as one of the most haunting ghost ship mysteries ever recorded. Because sometimes the most unsettling stories are not the ones filled with monsters or supernatural forces. Sometimes the most disturbing mysteries are the ones where the evidence is real, and the answers simply never appear.